There is a date on an official government report, printed in black and white, that almost nobody in America has actually looked at. The date is 2032. That's the year the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is projected to run out of money. Not someday, not in our grandchildren's lifetime, but 6 years from right now. And here's the part that gets left out of every panicked headline you've ever scrolled past. The checks don't stop. They shrink. On that day, the average retiree's monthly Social Security check drops by about $458 automatically, with no vote in Congress required to make it happen. Today we're going to do something almost nobody does with this story. We're going to skip the panic, open the actual report, and figure out exactly what your check looks like the day after. Every single year, the trustees of Social Security publish a report on the program's financial health. The 2026 edition came out in June, and here's what it actually says, not what a headline says it says. The Retirement Trust Fund, the one that pays retired workers and their survivors, can pay 100% of scheduled benefits until the fourth quarter of 2032. That's 1 quarter sooner than they projected last year. After that, the reserves are gone. But, and this is the part that matters enormously, the program does not go to zero. Social Security is funded primarily by payroll taxes coming in from people who are working right now, and those taxes don't stop arriving just because the savings account is empty. Money keeps flowing in every payday, and money keeps flowing out to retirees. What runs out is the reserve, the buffer that lets the program pay out more than it takes in. Once that buffer is empty, the program can only pay what it collects. And what it collects covers 78% of scheduled benefits. So the honest, boring, accurate version of the scary headline is this. In late 2032, without action from Congress, Social Security pays 78 cents on every promised dollar. That's a 22% cut. It is not zero, but 22% is not nothing either. And if you're the person living on that check, 22% is a catastrophe with a very specific dollar amount attached to it. So let's go get that number. Meet Jimmy. Jimmy is a retired worker collecting the average Social Security benefit, which as of May 2026 is $2,082.76 a month. Call it just under $25,000 a year. That's Jimmy's whole world. His rent, his groceries, his prescriptions, his car insurance, the birthday money he sends his grandkids. Now apply the 22% cut. 22% of $2,082 is $458 a month. Jimmy's new check, $1,624.55. Sit with that for a second, because $458 a month is not an abstraction. That is a car payment. That is a full month of groceries for 2 people. In most of the country, that's a third of a rent payment. Over a full year, Jimmy loses $5,498. Over a 20-year retirement, he loses about $110,000 in today's money. And he loses it not because he made a bad investment, not because he got scammed, not because a market crashed, but because a trust fund ran out of reserves and Congress didn't do anything about it in time. An independent analysis from the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget puts the average retiree cut right in this same neighborhood, roughly $500 a month, with 29 states facing losses even bigger than that, because benefits track lifetime earnings and some states have higher earning retiree populations than others. Here's where the 22% number goes from bad to genuinely dangerous, and it has nothing to do with the math. It has to do with who's actually living on this check. About half of all Americans aged 65 and older live in households where Social Security provides at least half of the total family income. Roughly 1 in 4 of those households rely on Social Security for 90% or more of everything they live on. And by more recent survey estimates, tens of millions of American seniors, something close to 40% of the retirement age population, depend on Social Security for 100% of their income. 0 pension, 0 portfolio, 0 rental property, Just the check. For a retiree with a paid-off house, a 401k, and a pension, a 22% Social Security cut is a painful adjustment. You travel less, you eat out less, you tighten up. For a retiree whose entire income is that check, a 22% cut isn't an adjustment. It's the difference between paying for medication and not paying for medication. Same percentage. Completely different life. That's why the "it's only a 22% trim" framing is so misleading. The cut lands hardest, by design, on exactly the people who have nothing else to fall back on. Now, you may have seen two different years floating around. Some coverage says 2032, some says 2034, and both are actually correct, which is exactly why this story confuses people. There are two legally separate trust funds. One pays retirement and survivor benefits. The other pays disability benefits. The retirement fund on its own runs dry in the fourth quarter of 2032, paying 78% after that. But the disability fund is in much better shape, and if Congress legally combined the two, which it has done before and could do again with a single vote, the combined fund lasts until the third quarter of 2034 and then pays 83% instead of 78%. So combining them buys about 2 extra years and softens the cut from 22% down to about 17%. That sounds like good news, and in the short term it is. But look at the longer projection in the same report, and the picture stops being comforting. Even with the funds combined, the share of scheduled benefits the program can actually pay keeps sliding down towards 65% by the end of the century. Combining the trust funds doesn't fix the problem. It reschedules it, which is, honestly, the most accurate one-sentence summary of how Washington has handled this issue for the last 40 years. So why doesn't Congress just fix it? Because there are only 3 real levers, and every single one of them is politically radioactive. Lever 1. Raise the payroll tax. Right now, Social Security is funded by a 12.4% payroll tax, split down the middle, 6.2% from you, 6.2% from your employer. To wipe out the entire projected shortfall immediately, in one move, that rate would have to rise to somewhere around 16.5%. For a traditionally employed worker, that's roughly 2 more percentage points out of every paycheck for the rest of your career, starting now. Lever 2. Raise or eliminate the wage cap. Social Security tax only applies to income up to a certain limit each year, which means someone earning $1 million finishes paying into Social Security for the entire year sometime in the first few weeks of February, and then contributes nothing for the remaining 10.5 months. Lifting that cap raises real money, and it's popular with voters, and it has still never made it through Congress. Lever 3. Cut benefits directly by raising the retirement age, trimming cost of living adjustments, or reducing payouts for higher earners. Every one of those 3 levers has a powerful group of people who will fight it to the death. So the path of least resistance for a politician is always the same. Do nothing, get reelected, and let the automatic 22% cut arrive on its own, because a cut that happens automatically is a cut nobody has to put their name on. That's not cynicism. That's the actual incentive structure, and it's why the depletion date has crept closer nearly every year instead of further away. All right, you can't vote the trust fund back into solvency by yourself, so let's talk about the one thing you actually control, making that $458 a month irrelevant to your life. Here's the question that turns this whole scary news story into a solvable math problem. How big a nest egg would you need, on your own, to replace the exact amount Social Security is projected to stop paying you? $458 a month is $5,498 a year. Using the standard 4% safe withdrawal guideline that retirement planners have used for decades, you'd need about $137,000 saved to generate that income for life without touching the principal. $137,000. That's the number. That's the whole cut, neutralized. Now here's the part that should make you either very relieved or very uncomfortable. depending on your age. If you're 25 right now, and you invest at a historically typical 7% annual return, hitting $137,000 by age 65 takes about $52 a month. $52. That is one dinner out. That is a couple of streaming subscriptions you forgot you were paying for. If you're 35, the same target takes about $113 a month. Still very doable, roughly a phone bill. But if you're 50, that same $137,000 now requires about $434 a month, every month, for 15 straight years. Same destination. 8 times the monthly pain, purely because of when you started. And notice what just happened here. The exact same brutal arithmetic that's slowly bankrupting the trust fund. The cost of waiting, compounding quietly in the background year after year, while everyone assumes there's still time, is the arithmetic sitting in your own retirement account right now. Congress waited. It got more expensive. Every year you wait does exactly the same thing to your number. The difference is that you can actually still do something about yours today, and you don't need a single vote from anybody. So here's everything, in one place. The 2026 Trustees Report says the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund runs dry in the fourth quarter of 2032. It does not go to zero. It pays 78%, a 22% cut. For the average retiree collecting $2,082 a month, that means losing $458 a month, about $5,500 a year, over $100,000 across a 20-year retirement. Combining the trust funds pushes the date to 2034 and softens the cut to 17%, but it doesn't fix anything. It just moves the deadline. And roughly half of American seniors get at least half their income from this check, which is why a 22% trim on paper is a genuine crisis in real kitchens. The fix on your end is $137,000, $52 a month if you start at 25, $113 if you start at 35, $434 if you wait until 50. Do not let this scare you into doing nothing, because doing nothing is the single most expensive option on this entire list. Tell me in the comments, do you actually expect Social Security to be there when you retire, and are you planning around it or around the cut? If this made the number make sense, hit like, subscribe for a new What If Money breakdown, and send it to somebody who's counting on that check. I'll see you in the next one.